welcome Jacqui Hogan with her speech entitled Uptight and Out of Sight. Jacqui Hogan.
What could you do to help a bad back? What could a fat woman do to make herself look thinner? And what could a young lady of fashion of the 19th century wear under her gown? Fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a young lady who is a little stout of figure must be in want of a corset. I don't wear this every day, even though I probably should. Now, when I was, as most of you know, I am a big fan of Jane Austen. And one of the things that I do is dress up in costume. I dress up in costume and I go to balls and I make my own gowns. And a couple of years ago, I decided that the one thing that was lacking was proper, authentic underclothes. So I set out, looking on the internet to start with, to find out what kind of corset a 19th century Jane Austen heroine would actually wear. I started with Wikipedia. Hey, I'm a techie. And interestingly enough, Wikipedia is actually mostly accurate about corsets. It tells you that there are actually a whole range of different kinds of corsets. And one of the interesting things is that the very first corset that it mentions is a men's corset. Now, none of the ladies in the audience are probably thinking, I don't know any men today who wear corsets, but I know a few who should. Now let me ask you, audience, how many of you have worn a corset at some point in your lives? Can I ask the gentleman at the back, please put your hand down? Now it's quite interesting because corsets, they were called all different kinds of things. Is that corsets weren't called corsets until about the mid-19th century. Before that, they were called stays, which I presume meant that it stayed the fat bits in. And interestingly, is that it was also called a pair of bodies. Now this is because it's in two parts. There's a busk and little hooks down the front, and there's laces up the back. Now I have a theory about this, and that is that it was called a pair of bodies because it was ladies who've got figures like mine who have kind of the equivalent of two bodies, and they had to contain them so that they became one body inside a corset. Now, I didn't stop at Wikipedia. I actually went onto Amazon and I found two books. I was amazed. There are actually books about underclothes. This one's called Corsets and Crinolines. And as you can see, I went through and picked out a whole load of interesting information. And this is called The History of Underclothes. Now, I'm going to hang on to these two because I'm quite sure that the audience is so limited that they will become collector's items at some stage. But it's quite interesting. Those were the only two books I found I found. Now, having looked at all the different kinds of corsets or bodies or stays that they were, I thought the next thing I need to do is go and find out who sells them. So I looked on the internet again. Now, when I put corsets or corset into Google, you could probably guess what I got. But you would be wrong, because the first page of Google, the half of the links that came up weren't, hey, sexy French maid, which is what I expected. They actually came up, it was men again. What is it with men and corsets? It was actually a whole bunch of transvestite sites. So there were pictures of 6'6" blokes in corsets wearing sort of 9-inch heeled shoes. I don't want to go there. Anyway, so I thought, well, I'll order some books, some catalogues from some of the more normal corset sites. And what I'll do is that I'll go into London and I'll go and get myself measured for a corset. Now, for anyone who's ever been measured, I'm hoping this is just the ladies for a bra, you'll know that it's actually quite an interesting experience. Now, I'd suggest the men in the audience probably don't want to listen too closely to this next bit. And I decided, what is the main place to get measured? Rigby and Peller. Now, they have an interesting approach to bra measurement. And I went into the changing room and the lady came up to me and she said, 36D, I think. Seriously. And what they do is they give you a bra and you put it on and they say, now I'm going to show you the proper way to wear a bra. And you kind of plop into it. I kid you not, guys. This is what we go through to get measured. Anyway, I hooked myself all up and I said, well, you know, I'm interested in a corset. And she said, oh, would Madam like an off-the-peg corset or a tailor-made one? So I said, well, how much is a tailor-made one? And she said, oh, we start at about £450. So I said, I'll just take the bra. Anyway, so I went home, a couple of weeks went by and I got some of the brochures. Well, I had to go and rescue them from my husband's study. So he'd half-inched them. And I picked out a corset, and this was it. Now, one thing I found out the first time I wore it is that it's actually illegal to drive wearing a corset. At least that's what the policeman told me when he stopped me, because the only way I could drive wearing it was actually I couldn't really see over the steering wheel. So I'm really looking forward to the first time I get to wear my corset under the gown at my next Jane Austen event. When I will not be exposing myself in this way, I will not be wearing my corset loose, I will be wearing it uptight and under my gown and out of sight. Madam Toastmaster.